It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, May the 17th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's producing the Come On With It edition. So if you're in the St. John's Metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. I don't know if you were following along the Men's World Ice Hockey Championships being played in Czechia. So Canada yesterday against Norway. Beat them 4-1. We have a very pedestrian-looking crew. I mean, we got some nice hockey players out there, but that is less than an enthusiastic effort coming from our lads as of yet. I guess the first real test will happen tomorrow when they take on Finland, but they're going to have to play a lot better than they've been playing so far. It's kind of motley hockey. Anyway, Riley Mercer, goaltender for the Drummondville Voltigeurs. Of course, they're off to the Memorial Cup final. So the four teams in it is the host, the Saginaw Spirits, the first time they've ever played in the Memorial Cup. Then the WHL champions, the Moose Jaw Warriors, the OHL champions, the London Knights, and of course the Q Maritime Junior Hockey League champions, the Drummondville Voltigeurs. So good luck to Riley Mercer, of course, from Bay Roberts' older brother Dawson, playing for the New Jersey Devils, and of course playing for Canada at the Worlds. Have we ever had a player win a Memorial Cup, a player from this province? I know Travis Cricket had been involved with the St. John Sea Dogs at that level, but have we ever had a player win? I don't know. Anyway, let me know if you know. All right, let's go back to the Olympic and Paralympic swimming trials in Toronto, and I'm going to keep talking about this young lady because she is a phenom, and that's Summer McIntosh. So when she hit the world stage at the age of 14, I mean, she was blowing the doors off people at that tender age, just missed the podium a couple of times in Tokyo. And now yesterday, she broke her own world record in the 400-meter individual medley by a full second, which is a lot in the pool. So it's just amazing how she dominates. So the 400 individual medley means that you swim 100 meters at the butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and freestyle. So here she comes, poised to be one of the big stories at the Paris Olympics. If you haven't watched her swim, it's absolutely worth your while to do exactly that. She's got 2 world junior records. She holds the Canadian records in the 200-meter freestyle, the 200-meter butterfly. She says the butterfly is her worst stroke, but yes, she pulled away from the field in the butterfly yesterday as well, so absolutely amazing stuff. Another record to be set over this coming weekend when Team Canada, the women's rugby team, plays against the New Zealand Black Ferns on Saturday. So there's a player named Tyson Bulkaboom. She's going to earn her 68th cap for Canada, becoming the most capped Canadian women's rugby player of all time, surpassing Gillian Florence on Canada's list. So congratulations to Tyson, and go get him always, of course, when you come up against New Zealand. Tall task. The last time they played New Zealand in Canada, they had 10,000 people watch the game, the most to ever watch a Canadian women's rugby game in this country. So go get them and good luck. All right. So happy May 2-4 weekend, I guess. Well, I mean, it's far removed from the 24th of May, but Victoria Day weekend, you'll hear lots of PSAs coming forward about safety. You know, nobody wants to see some of these tragic headlines as a result of the long weekend. You know, there's going to be lots of traffic out there, lots of trailers being broke out for the first time possibly, people taken to the water maybe for the first time, so I get it. No one wants to be preached at. But, you know, things like your life jacket. How often do you see people out scooting around on the pond and they're using their life jacket as a bum cushion as opposed to a flotation device? So get where you're going safe. Try to watch your bobber if you're out in the boat and the like. All right, and speaking of safety, have you seen the pictures as a result of the collision out in Kippens a few days ago? So the Serious Incident Response Team are investigating what happened because it involved an RCMP vehicle. It was an SUV. So there was some type of collision with a Mazda hatchback, and both vehicles are severely damaged. So they're looking for people in the area. If you saw what went on, get in touch with Mike King and his team at CERT NL. So that's the Serious Incident Response Team. But boy, oh boy, that must have been some collision because both vehicles are absolutely beat. Okay. So we talked yesterday about school buses being passed in Mount Terrace and 32 tickets issued in one school zone in CBS on Tuesday. So all worthwhile reminders and to know exactly what's going on and how reckless people choose to be. And the mention that I put forward yesterday is, we have enough to worry about when you get to school. We shouldn't have all of these heightened worries about to and fro school. And then there was one mention of violence at school, and people continue to call it bullying, but bullying is a bit of an innocuous term here now. Getting a punch in the face is not bullying, it's crime. And I made a comment, and a couple of people picked up on it and sent me emails asking, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And it's a reference to me saying, take back your school. So we know that the bullies will target the most vulnerable, right? The easy pickings, the low-hanging fruit, and it can become quite devastating. And in the world of take back your school, and this is maybe something for school administrators to think about and teachers to think about, and yes, for your son or daughter who may indeed be one of those popular kids in school. There's a story from one of the American states. I'm pretty sure I remember it being Wisconsin. And so when you talk about popular kids in schools, sometimes that will be some of the big notable athletes. And this particular effort was put forward by the high school quarterback. And of course, the quarterback would be one of those revered people in a high school. So the concept was really quite simple. As opposed to allowing folks who are being targeted by the bullies to be isolated and, left to their own devices and being told to stand up for yourself. Here's what they did in that school. So this quarterback and some of his more popular buddies in the school, including some other girls that were popular for whatever reason, what they started to do is use social media versus the way it's currently being used as the digital pylon, the place where people can be keyboard warriors and to taunt and intimidate and threaten and harass young people. What they did is they started sending out social media posts saying things like this. So let's just say young Johnny was being the target. They would put out a tweet or an Instagram post or whatever saying, John is a great piano player. Mary is a terrific singer. Joey is fantastic in math. He's helped me tremendously over the years. And so when the bullies see that the targeted individuals are being supported by the popular kids, the result was really quite clear. They had a good look at it as administrators in that school, and the incidence of bullying went way down really quickly. Why? Because the bullies don't want to stand up to the popular kid. The bully doesn't want to take on the high school quarterback. Right? The girl bully doesn't want to take on the most popular girl in school. So they, in essence, took their school back. So that's what I mean by that. And I think that would probably be a pretty worthwhile tool to use as social media versus the way it's currently being used. So that's basically what that was about, if someone wanted me to elaborate. And maybe it's an idea that some young people who are popular in school could do the best they can to make their environment a little safer, a little bit more pleasant, a little healthier. Anyway, speaking of social media, sometimes some of these stories come across as, sensational for the sake of. And this one is regarding TikTok. So we know in the United States that the Americans are talking about banning TikTok if the company that owns it doesn't sell, and of course gets away from the Chinese government. In this country, it's already banned on government devices. And now what we're looking at is the Canadian Security Intelligence Service is warning individuals to probably think about how you use TikTok. They suggest that you should not. So there's really some interesting questions in this story. It's very clear that the information gathered is available to the government of China. And you might say, well, I don't care what they know about my 14-year-old posting videos of dancing in the backyard or singing or juggling or whatever the case may be. But inside of TikTok, they're asking very specific questions. Why would a social media platform like that need access to your contact list and other information stored on your device? And so consequently, down the road, you're not always going to be a teenager. And the government in China, as alleged by David Vigneault, the head of CSIS, is saying they compile the data and it can be absolutely used against you when you grow up. And so consequently, and there's yet another mention of artificial intelligence as they're applying it to your personal information. So it kind of makes sense. I mean, the government of China, of course, which you can't trust a word out of their mouth, says things like, oh, we're not using that type of information. But quite clearly, intelligence agencies around the world are warning their own citizens to be very wary of that social media platform. Yes, it's been entertaining for some who have. I don't have a TikTok account. I can barely manage my Twitter account. Yes, it can be entertaining, and yes, it's a way to share stories and performances or whatever they use TikTok for, and yes, it has an implication on attention spans. But when governments are being warned by their intelligence agencies, and we like to think that intelligence agencies are not partisan organizations, right? So maybe, just maybe, it's a conversation to be had in the House about, what are you using TikTok for? Do you need it? Can you just use Instagram or Twitter or whatever platform that you prefer other than that? Because, yes, TikTok has access to the information in your phone. It kind of sounds like a silly story, but it has real-life implications. You want to take it on? Let's do it. All right. Let's get to the big story from yesterday, if we can call it that. And there was a press conference held by Jennifer Williams, the CEO of Hydro, and Minister Andrew Parsons regarding Muskrat Falls. Not a whole lot of real new information came from that particular press conference, so they're talking about spending in excess of $700 million per year to help control our rates. The worry was always that your power rates would double. And so they say they're going to introduce a cap of 2.25% increase until 2030. Okay, I'm happy enough to not pay more on my power bill. They're using examples of, if your monthly power bill is around $300, it would increase to $307 instead of roughly $500. Great. But that's still my money. So yes, as individuals, to have our power bills controlled and to begin at some 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour and a cap on annual increases, it's still the $700+ million that comes from me and you. I mean, it's not new money invested by some unknown entity. So, okay, fine. But the press conference itself really could have been more fulsome. Here's what I mean. The implication of controlling power rates because of Muskrat Falls. Remember back when the government brought forward legislation, two bills in particular that are still of note today, Bill 60 and 61. One of them was the moratorium on wind, and the other one was to take the PUB out of the equation when talking about rates associated with Muskrat Falls. And so, as a result, Newfoundland Power needs to be represented in that press conference. Because it's fine to have a cap on Muskrat itself, but that does not mean that there won't be rate applications for hikes coming from Newfoundland Power. And there's a couple already in play. The utility estimates at about 6.7% increase as of July the 1st. Then there's another proposal on the table for another 1.5%. And some of that will be not only hikes for infrastructure, upkeep, preventative maintenance and what have you, it's also inside their guaranteed rate of return. So it was really brought forward as extremely good news, but it does not include the fact that that does not mean we'll see increases beyond 2.25%, because we will. In addition to that, looking back at all the rate mitigation, I guess the press conference was based on the fact that there's been a finalizing of the $5.2 billion, which we talked about yesterday. $5 billion federal loan guarantee from the Conservatives, $3 billion from the Liberals, then a $1 billion loan, and then a $1 billion addition to the federal loan guarantee, and some of that 5.2 involves Hibernia. So, yeah, okay. So now it's been finalized, but it does not include the fact that Power still has the ability to apply to the PUB for rate hikes, which they have and they will continue in the future. So, and nor does it include some of the conversation that we were hoping would be gleaned from the press conference about, for instance, the status of the turbines at Muskrat Falls. We're told that one might have to be dismantled in full, and they thought it maybe impacted a second turbine of the four that are in play at Muskrat. No real understanding about any further reliability update of the Labrador Island Link. We know that it has failed many tests over the past. The last high megawatt test was, we're told, successful, but we don't have a lot of updates regarding Muskrat and long-term reliability or what have you, nor do I think there's any information shared about what Hydro is looking at for some additional power supply. Yes, we're talking about an eighth turbine at Bay d'Espoir. Yes, Holyrood's not going away anytime soon. Out of Bay d'Espoir, we're talking about $527 million for the installation of an eighth turbine, but a lot missing from the big picture of energy and Muskrat itself. If you want to take it on, we can do it. How are we doing out there, Dave? Couple of quick ones before we get to your calls this morning. Pretty strange little story out there about, for the first time, the Canadian government and the American government are co-investing in critical minerals. So when I said the headline, I thought, oh, this might be interesting. So I get into it. They're putting together $32.5 million. Not necessarily some big whopping news, but I guess we'll continue to look for any advancements and applications for expanding critical mineral mining in Labrador itself. And then you take it a little step further down the road. Even though last year some of the prices for instance, lithium fell through the floor by 82.5%. But on that front, so it doesn't matter if you like electric vehicles or we're going to consider one in the future, almost irrelevant, but we all have cell phones and laptops, and yes, some people will absolutely prefer to get into an electric vehicle. But I think it's highly questionable some of the moves by the federal government on that front. So the big plants, notably in Ontario, for the production of. Now, some of the subsidies and tax breaks are associated with production levels, but just think about it out loud. The industry has a value of somewhere in and around $16-17 billion contributed to GDP. At this moment in time, when you barrel up all of the subsidies and tax breaks, provincially and federally, we're in the ballpark of like $53 billion. So $53 billion from governments into an industry that's valued in and around $17 billion when we talk about GDP. So I know people are concerned with that one, and we can 100% talk about it if you're so inclined. I see there's a caller there who I believe is the fellow's been sending me messages about seismic, and we can indeed talk about it. He's worried about seismic and the impact on marine life, as has been noted over the years, specifically when we talk about Capelin and the spawning grounds. So we had a marine scientist from Oceania, Canada on. His name, curiously, was Jack Daly, no relation, talking about calling for a moratorium. For the most part, the pushback has not only been about, the small exploitation when you talk about the impact of whales and seals and the rest. I understand that. The problem with the seal conversation at this moment in time is there has not been any government successively to even talk about doing anything about a seal. So until there's going to be someone to say, here's what we're going to do, whether it be to fight the good fight, which I think governments have tried over the years, but the problem is the propaganda and the lies has sunk into the hearts and the minds of decision makers around the world. So I understand your concern and your question in the comments about seals, but what do we do with that concern? I think that would be the question that I would ask, and we'll see if we can get your thoughts. Last one. So we did talk about the fact that a group of parishioners down at Portugal Coast St. Philip's who attended Holy Rosary Church, they did some investigating and they pushed back against the decision to allow the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation of St. John's to sell their church. And still plenty of good questions about whether or not they should be able to put it on the market, period. So they got a ruling from the Vatican that said clearly that the corporation broke canonical law or canon law and should not and could not have put that up for sale. So they maybe have spared their church. Now, a similar story is coming from the folks who were supporters of St. Patrick's Church. So the problem there, and the difference is that was put on the market, I believe, second most expensive property outside the Basilica. The price tag was $1.5 million, and that sale has been concluded, is my understanding. So they have now a similar report from the Vatican that says the same thing. Canon law was not followed. The question then becomes, and if you're one of those folks involved with the St. Patrick's conversation and can fill in some of the blanks for me, I'd really appreciate the call today. So what does that mean for ownership and the potential for that to continue on as a church, which it has for decades here in the city of St. John's? So fascinating stuff, and shameful anyway, that the Vatican, with their untold billions of dollars and the monies they've paid in settlements worldwide, were unwilling to get involved in the issue regarding the evil perpetrated against residents of the Mount Cashel orphanage. So if you're involved in that St. Patrick's story, please do let us know what you know, because I'm really curious about it. Quick programming note here on VOCM. Coming up this long weekend, and this comes directly from the man himself. He says, this week, our songs will debut on the VOCM network 6 a.m. on Saturdays. He says, I know it's early, but a lot of people are up at that time. 6 a.m. on Saturdays and 1 p.m. on Sundays. It's a program called Our Songs. It's a 1-hour show playing traditional and folk music of Newfoundland and Labrador from the past 7 decades, with a few stories, some info about the artists, composers, and songs along the way. So have a listen. And the host, Shanniganach frontman Chris Andrews. So Our Songs debuts this weekend. Break a leg, Chris. I'm sure many people will be interested to tune into that show. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. And of course, we're taking your calls right after this break. Damien, who wanted to talk seismic, just dropped out. Can we get Damien back? Because I do want to talk about that issue. And whatever you want to talk about right after this, don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Big thanks to Joe Skanes. Obviously a wealth of hockey knowledge. I asked the question if anyone from this province had ever played as a player on a Memorial Cup winning team, which of course is the highest award for junior hockey, major junior hockey in the country. Apparently a fellow named Jonathan Boone from Bell Island has a Memorial Cup ring with the Ottawa 67s. They were the host team back in 1999. He was on the roster, never played, later traded to Halifax, but he has a Mem Cup ring. So there you go. Thanks, Joe. All right, let's go. Line number 5. Good morning, Damien. You're on the air.
To bring awareness to some very disturbing facts that are intentionally been hidden. Consensus among Canadian scientists has always been that the shallows of the Grand Banks are the largest spawning grounds in the North Atlantic. for numerous species, and the summer months are the short window in which those fish and capelin spawn. Now, this year, when all those capelin, cod, herring, whales, and everything else go up in those shallows to spawn, and when they all bunch up in those shallows all together to create life, we're going to seismically blast all of them, all at once, in the shallows, for the whole duration of the entire spawning season in a grid pattern over the entire shallows. There are countless studies that show things like fish, eggs, larvae, and young fish are killed a mile on each side of this ship, and we will be doing thousands of miles in a grid over the entire shallows. Or I could tell you that starting on May the 24th and for the next 110 days consecutively, there will be a blast only comparable to a nuclear explosion every 20 seconds for 110 days. But I won't go into that, all that stuff. I'll just tell you about the two studies that we did right here in Newfoundland. They were advertised by the union on their own page as their own seismic study. The participants were paid through the union. One on shrimp done in the Triangle, historically one of the most productive shrimp areas in the whole ocean. It shows that it was normal catch.
Damien, we can't hear you. Damien? Damien? We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get back to you on a different phone.
Well, you can do that, no problem. So we do want to hear what you have to say. Thanks, Damien. We'll revisit that conversation. Yeah, because, I mean, there's a bunch of questions. Who's doing it for what purpose? Is it oil seismic work being done? Of course, that would generally not happen in the shallows. Is it being done for some sort of counting purpose, whether that be one species or another, shrimp or what have you? I don't know, but we'll see what Damien has to say right after he returns to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Amanda Power. You're on the air.
Hi. I did an interview yesterday with Geraldine Mackey about the speed issues in Kenmount Terrace and just the complete and utter lack of regard and safety issues regarding our school buses. I know the RNC have been doing a big canvass of the school zones. I've been emailing the city on and off since 2016 about our speed issues in Kenmount Terrace, and it's fallen on deaf ears until Councillor Davis recently called in, I believe, to speak with you on Tuesday about it.
I mean, I try to bring up these types of issues frequently. So just describe what you're seeing. I saw the story, I heard the interview, but for those who missed it, exactly what are you seeing in Kenmount Terrace?
So what we're seeing, like, this is one bus stop for one school. There's 3 schools that Kenmount Terrace serves, or that they're zoned for, sorry. So this is one bus stop in front of my house for the primary school that we're zoned for. The school bus comes to a complete stop. The Ladysmith Drive is a blind hill when you come down from Great Eastern. The people are flying down over that and just taking no regard that there's a big yellow bus with red flashing lights, a stop sign. I mean, I don't know how you can't see it. And kids on both sides of the street crossing in front of the school bus, and cars continue to zoom by while they're either loading the school bus, they're getting home from school. It's been an ongoing issue since my oldest was in kindergarten in 2021. But this year we took it upon ourselves as neighbors to use our Ring doorbell cameras or video from our own phones, or get the plate and the driver and the description of the car and get them fined, because I don't find anybody is going to listen, or once you're fined that, you're not going to do it again. So our whole purpose is just to slow the traffic around the school buses, but also to let people know it is a residential area. Yes, you're using it to cut through to bypass Kenmount Road, but people live here, kids are playing, and it's a safety issue for the families that live up there, and you want your kids to be able to get home and to school safe. And when a school bus stops, all kids assume that they're safe to to cross the road. And now our kids are no longer have that safety net.
I heard James Cadigan, of course, with the RNC, say that, when people see this type of behaviour, to jot down license plate numbers, descriptions of the car, descriptions of the operator of the vehicle, and pass it along to the RNC. So when that is the case, and you mentioned that you've already reached out to the city repeatedly, the RNC, and they're trying to up their game in the school zones, but what do they do with the information? Do you know? Are people actually getting tickets after the fact based on witness testimonies, or what's happening there?
So what happens there is if you're caught, especially in the day and age of where everybody has a cell phone, you can take a video quite easily. You have doorbells now that snapshot a picture in time or get video. So what we have done is get as much of a description of the driver, the make and model, and the license plate. You have those key things, the direction they're going, the time it happened at, and it's on video. So we have seen a lot of tickets issued. We had another one issued. We had somebody run the bus yesterday. License plate, description of the car, driver, ticket will be issued. All caught on video. So, we have been subpoenaed to court, and at that time they get a copy of the video. They don't know that until they get to court that you are on video and you get the statements of all the witnesses. They do get a fine. I believe it's somewhere around $650, and I believe it's 6 demerit points. But we have gotten tickets because of this.
And it's the way it should be, Then the concept is about traffic calming, because yes, avoiding Kelsey and Kenmount is a pretty easy thing to want to do. As someone who drives on Kenmount and Kelsey all the time, I'd love to be able to avoid it, but I don't have the wherewithal or the want to cut through Kenmount Terrace. So what are the suggestions? Because years back when they did the traffic study, we were told that whether it be Ladysmith or I can't remember the other street, maybe Kiwanis, they weren't eligible for they weren't eligible for traffic calming. Now something has changed. What has changed?
So I think what has changed, because that was my email that I heard back from the former counselor, that we didn't qualify, and I believe that was in 2022. So with the announcement of the new school, and however big that school is going to be, whatever grades, you're going to have a very big increase in traffic. So now they're like, okay, well, we're going to traffic calm Ladysmith. So when the incident happened with the animal being hit this weekend, it kind of lit a fire under me. So, and then I found out, okay, you're putting it in June, these traffic calming measures of speed cushions. Fine, but you're going to do it in June when school is out, and you're going to remove it in the fall when school starts. And we all know that traffic tends to decrease when people aren't rushing in the mornings to drop their kids off at school, or if a kid misses the bus, or summer tends to be a decrease in our area. So what changed was the announcement of the school, and I think now residents that really enjoyed this little animal that was struck and killed are kind of like, this was eye-opening that this could be a kid. So I just started videoing the intersections because I was told, we need to do studies or we need to count cars. So I provided them with 6 hours of video from the Kiwanis and Ladysmith intersection, where I counted over 310 cars using that intersection from 2:08 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. A very short, minute period of time, over 300 cars. People not stopping for crosswalks. So, if you're going to put a school up there, you need more crosswalks that are well lit both day and night, maybe light activated. I've been told that the crosswalks give pedestrians a false sense of security. I understand that. You can't just cross a crosswalk if somebody is not able to stop in time for you to cross. But, common sense prevails a lot of the time. I teach my kids, look both ways, regardless if there's a crosswalk. Do not walk until everybody is stopped. It's common sense. If you have crosswalks there that aren't lit in the night and someone's crossing, drivers can't see them. So more crosswalks, more three-way stops to enable people to slow down. The speed cushions may or may not work because the road is fairly wide. Cars can possibly drive around them and drive closer to the curb. I just think that everything is being very reactive to the school and not proactive to knowing that Kenmount Terrace is a growing community and that there's lots of small families there, that there's been numerous traffic violations up there. The RNC have been doing an amazing job. Tom Davis has been a big advocate since he's gotten in, and we're finally getting some traction. But they need to start thinking of the long term and not putting short-term measures in. They need to think about the neighborhood as a whole and not one street, because people aren't going to be just using that one street. They're going to be using Great Eastern, they're going to be using Petty Fort to get to the end of Ladysmith, to get to the new school. So they need to start thinking now for 5 years out.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious something has to be done here. And if you took the announcement of a school, there's still some concerns or questions about the school, too, given the fact that we don't even know what grades or how many students will be serviced. But it does trigger some further safety concerns when we talk about road safety. And good point about false sense of security at a crosswalk. There's always going to be stories about someone getting struck as they're trying to cross the road safely on a crosswalk, and you don't know if you've been seen by the driver. So the one reminder that one of my boys' teachers used to give to their students all the time was, it's not just wait and see that everyone has stopped, but to make actual eye contact with the drivers in both directions so that you know they see you. So that's a good point on that front. Hopefully something changes, because these stories are infuriating. And it's not just in Kenmount Terrace. The exact same time your story and interview was aired, they were talking about on CBS 32 speeding tickets in a school zone, one school zone on one afternoon. So the issue is massive, and I don't know why people are so willing to be so reckless when we talk about the potential for the next headline to be not people passing school buses, but a child exiting a school bus gets struck. You know, so inevitably it's going to happen.
That's exactly what I'm fighting for. Like, I know it's not a Kenmount Terrace issue. I know it's not just that one neighborhood. I am advocating for Kenmount Terrace because, of course, that's where I live and that's where my family is going to grow up to. But it's a provincial issue. Like, it's other subdivisions here, like Cowan Heights probably have the same issue, places in Mount Pro, so I get it. And I really just want people to understand that when a bus is stopped, I don't care if it's in Kenmount Terrace, if it's on Portugal Cove Road, if it's on Newfoundland Drive, just stop.
Just stop. Pretty succinct message. Yeah,
just have a look. Because if it's picking up kids, some of these kids could have learning disabilities, not be able to think their way through that car is not going to stop, and they don't know. So if you hit that kid, it's a whole different headline.
That it is. I appreciate the time and the good work you're putting into this issue, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take good care.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. I mean, let's not have that headline, right? School-age child struck, hurt, badly, killed. I mean, come on. Big thanks to a couple of folks who've also chimed in about the Memorial Cup question. So Joe told us about Jonathan Boone from Belle Island and the Ottawa 67s in 1999. And in 2018, I actually remember this as soon as someone wrote me about it. We had 4 players on the Acadie Bathurst Titans, the Titans. And a young fella from here, Adam Hallwell, actually scored the winner in the Memorial Cup. The goaltender was a local as well, a kid named Fitzpatrick, I'm pretty sure. So big thanks to folks sending me along the info. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to revisit the seismic conversation with Damien on line 4. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Damien, you're back on the air.
Yes, I'm here to bring awareness to some very disturbing facts that are intentionally being hidden from the public. Consensus among Canadian scientists has always been that the shallows of the Grand Banks are the largest spawning beds in the whole North Atlantic for numerous species, and the summer months are is the short window in which those species like capelin spawn. Now, this year, when all those capelin, cod, herring, whales, dolphins, and everything else go up on the shallows of the Grand Banks to spawn, or to eat those spawning, when all that bunch up in those shallows and all get together to create life, what are we going to do with them this year? We're going to seismically blast all of them, all at once, for the whole duration of the entire spawning season in a grid over the entire shallows. There are countless studies that show things like a killed fish a mile on each side of that ship, and we'll be doing thousands of miles in the entire shallows. Or I could say that starting May 24th and for the next 110 days continuously, there will be a blast only comparable to a nuclear explosion every 20 seconds. But I want go on with all those studies. I'll just tell you about the 2 studies we did right here in Newfoundland, advertised by the union as their own seismic studies. The participants were paid through the union, so is theirs. The one on shrimp done in the Triangle, historically one of the most productive areas in our ocean, it showed that catch rates were normal before it was blasted. After it was blasted, they couldn't find enough shrimp in the Triangle to do a study, so they had to go home. Knowing this information, what do you think the union and DFO did with it? They hid it, and they let that ship continue for thousands of more miles over the entire shrimp beds. The dates correlate precisely with the total collapse of the stock. Fishers were so affected that some even had to sell out. A lucrative license, now worthless because quotas were so low. That could have been prevented. One study on crab done right here in Newfoundland showed it kills all the small males and all the females. But not one fisherman in this province heard that one either. But the union did. They had their own guy on that survey boat doing their own science. Knowing all of this, the union and DFO and the province let the whole crab ground be blasted. And what do you think happened to catch rates in the following years? Ask DFO. But I'm going to tell you now, as only now building up. The only reason you're hearing this is that a couple of years ago, I went to the union and I asked to see those studies. They blocked, and when refused, I asked for a lawyer. Under the terms of the union, it's the right of every fisherman in this province. And although I didn't get an actual lawyer, I did get someone, a liaison, and she was amazing. She forced the union to release all this information because it's actually our right as Canadians to know it. Now, this year, they're going out to let all those capelin, cod, whales, and everything else bunch up in the shallows, and when they do, you don't have to be a scientist to know what's going to happen. And I would also add another little thing that you might find interesting to all this. This all happened before. It dates to the last time those shallows were blasted, correlate precisely with the collapse of the northern cod and offshore capelin stocks. It didn't recover for 30 years. If we do it again, do we have another 30 years to fix it?
A couple of questions.
This is all easily verifiable and true. Just ask the union. But don't believe me. Ask all of them. Ask the union, Mr. Fury, or Seamus, or McDonald. The government and the union are the ones profiting. They're the ones who claim to be in charge. Ask them. With the cod teetering on the edge of the critical zone and the capelin stocks in the shape that they're in, I don't think this is the time to wipe out the few we have left. Thanks for your time and the many occasions that you have used your show to put this out there about the seismic to the people of the province. Thanks, Paddy.
No problem, Jamie. Very quick question. So there's been seismic conducted here in the province for quite a long time. It's been beneficial to the oil industry and damaging to the marine wildlife, and we know that. And the studies you refer to, I've seen them, and I'm painfully aware of what they include. And they're not just studies that have been done here. They've been done in other coastal countries, Scotland, Iceland, and the like. My very simple question is, who's doing this seismic work now? And what's the intent? Is this for the oil industry? Because generally speaking, they blast way further from the shore. The
seismic studies that were done here in this province were done.
No, I know that part.
By the union.
Yes, I know, but what entity, what industry is doing the upcoming seismic work? Do you know?
Well, I don't really know. I suppose it's the province and the federal government. Sure, it wouldn't be a foreign country coming into Canada doing seismic work when I think seismic is banned in all the free world except right here in Newfoundland.
No,
and another couple of places.
It's not, but the question is, foreign countries, for instance, in the oil business, other companies have absolutely come in and done their own seismic work. What happened here years ago was that the CNLOPB thought that they should do some seismic work, and of course Oilco, which was part of Nalcor, they thought that doing some seismic work here would help attract bidders on land sales at the CNLOPB every year, and it has been effective on that front. So that's all I'm wondering, is this Oilco doing it? Is it led by the CNLOPB? Is it led by the province? Is it led by the feds? Is it ExxonMobil? Like, that's all I'm trying to get at, because that would allow me to do some follow-up. That's all I was trying to do.
Well, Paddy, I suggest you follow up with the union, because this is not like ancient studies talking about 30 years ago when this is done. These studies are only 4 or 5 years old, done right here. This is not some ancient history.
I'm not saying it is, Damien. This is not me against you. This was me just quite simply trying to find out that little tidbit of information. And if you didn't know, fine, I will ask the union. I was just wondering if you happen to know, you see this particular vessel that's poised to do the seismic, that would just give me another morsel of information so I could chase it.
When, what brought this all up about me now was on our union page. On our union page, there was a notice to fishers that says to watch out for the union boat, for the seismic boat. I forget the name of her, but the name is on the union page.
I'll have a look.
And for us to watch out for her, she's going to be starting off out in that shallow water by the rig, out in that like 38, 40 fathom, the shallows of the Grand Banks, and she's going to be going for 4 months in each direction. They even gave out where she was going, what she's going to be doing. So I assume the union would know.
Yeah, I just popped up the page. I will find it here, and we'll go directly to union leadership. We've had a couple of union-related conversations, and the union has long said that they're opposed to seismic work, but I will indeed ask this very specific question of the union as soon as possible, and hopefully that means today.
Yes, Paddy, when we were out fishing yesterday, I never got the full story, but I heard bits and pieces with the racket going on, and I heard that woman say that she was for building enterprise value. Now, was she one of the ones that were out there just a couple of short years ago on the board when all this was going ahead? Like, for a fella like me to walk out to the union and demand a lawyer, as the first time in the history of the province that ever happened, for seismic work, and like everybody on that high up in that science department and the board out to the union, every one of them must have known about that then. And what are they going to do now? How are they going to build enterprises when I'm pointing to specific events that tore down the enterprises?
Okay. I just very quickly mentioned to Dave the specific person that we need to speak with at the union, whether that be Mr. Pretty, who's the current president, and or one of the reps that has been on the show in the past talking about the environmental related issues. That would be Katie Power. We're going to see what we can find out today, Damien. No problem at all.
Okay, Paddy, thanks. And thank you for putting it out there. And I won't be on anymore. I'm just wanted you to bring this forward so everybody could see what is happening here in this province.
100%, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Paddy.
Thanks, Damien. All the best. Yeah, we'll follow that, and we'll see if we can't get Miss Power on the programme ASAP. Let's take a break. When we go back, the Mayor of New West Valley is Mike Tiller. He's next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Okay, just based on the call from Damien just a second ago, here's what the report on the FFAW's website. So, and this was posted on the 3rd of May. Harvesters are reminded of the seismic season starting later this month. The seismic vessel, the Amazon Conqueror, is expected in St. John's within the next 2 weeks. She will depart St. John's towards Hibernia Oil Platform the morning of May 18th, and the first shot of seismic is estimated around May 24th. After 60 days, the Conqueror will survey near the Hebron Oil Platform for another 50 days. And it goes on to talk about the contact person is indeed Katie Power, as we mentioned. The note is also attached here. Fishers are not required to move fishing gear from industrial work areas. It is illegal for anyone but the gear owner to remove gear. Related concerns offshore must be communicated to the FLO or the Industry Relations Representative ASAP. So by the sounds of the way this is written, the seismic is going to be conducted around the Hibernia Oil Platform and around the Hebron Oil Platform. We'll see if we can get some more specific information when we get Miss Power on the program. Let's roll line number 2. Say good morning to the Mayor of New West Valley. That's Mike Tiller. Mayor Tiller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. It's a beautiful one.
'Tis that. Well, it's a bit grey in town, but standard.
I guess so. On Tuesday, Paddy, we had Rogers out. We had Kerry Vincent on behalf of CMHC, and we were given a $500,000 grant for Housing Acceleration Fund. Basically, what that means is if we have any developers, for example, we have 2 plots of land that we are currently doing a housing needs assessment for the town. Once that housing needs assessment is done, we will be reissuing an RFP for our 2 plots of land. Any developer that wants to come in, that $500,000 can be used for, say, to put a road in, to put in water and sewer, to get the plots ready so that any developer can come in then and do out their plots and sell their lots, and businesses can come in and set up. So it's with a small town, that's usually your main hindrance in housing is having the necessary funds for this kind of work. You can't go to Municipal Capital Works and say we want $500,000 to put in a road for housing development. That kind of falls under a different line, so it's well needed for our town.
It's a significant amount of money, so it could be used for anything. There's no strings attached, whether it be for site development, roads, everything.
Correct. It's even a line there that there needs technology needed. Like if we were to put an internet line or a cell tower or something up, that it could be used for that also. And
so this, I think you said, came from the Canada Housing Accelerator Fund.
Correct.
A lot of smaller communities have reported very similar challenges there, is having the ability or the human resources to fill out what is a pretty tangly application form. Was this all done in-house with your staff?
It was, and that's why we have 4 full-time employees and a call-in, and a lot of times, we have citizens that say, why do you employ so many people? I mean, not knowing the inner workings of an office, but I can guarantee you there's not one application, there's not one piece of funding that goes out that we don't apply for, whether it's under the Disability Act, where it's under the for exercise, I can't get the word I'm looking for now, Patty, whatever is out there, we apply for. And again, there's a lot of work that goes into these applications, and that's why you need dedicated, hard-working staff to make this work.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine how many communities across the country, smaller communities, have not applied for some money that they could very dearly use, but don't have the resources to actually even fill out the application or to compile the data required, because there's a significant amount of work that goes into that particular application. So the application also does include what the intended outcome is. So how many units are you intending to build? What's the plan?
It's 22 units over 3 years. And again, that goes to new housing development from marketing. We've partnered with it's a group that promotes the east coast of the country for people that want to retire, say, from the mainland, who want to have Atlantic Canada as their home. We're using them to advertise on Instagram and on Facebook. Again, we have 30 tax sales that we've already done. We've got another 18 that we're doing either late summer or early fall. So this will open up some previously unavailable land for anybody that wants to come in, to move, to do whatever they want to do here. And the only downside to that is if you're buying a property, say, with a dilapidated house, you have a huge cost because of the central waste management of getting rid of the initial house structure that's on it. And we've lobbied for some relief for municipalities to have cheaper or other options of getting rid of this, but we always fall on deaf ears when it comes to central waste management.
Can you help break down the 24 units for us? So are we talking single detached family homes, duplexes, triplexes, 6-unit buildings? What's the structure, the composition look like?
It is whatever a developer wants to put here, Patty. We are not limiting it to anything. Right now, when our RFP goes out, it's going to be, what do you want to bring to our town? We'll go over the RFPs and pick what is most suitable for the town.
Yeah, because that's the trick, right? I mean, there's some of the new monies in that $6 billion for the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund has a bunch of strings attached. Now, it doesn't apply to New West Valley. As a matter of fact, it doesn't apply to any community in this province because it was all about population. Population in excess of 300,000. So that's where the Accelerator Fund is the backstop for smaller communities and even big cities like St. John's, because that's where the money is coming from. So this is really good news. When does the RFP go out?
Well, we're right now working on the housing needs assessment because no developer is going to come in and propose anything unless they know there's a need. And we can guarantee that there's a need here, Patty. We are trying to grow our town exponentially, of course, with an aging population, looking at a shrinking population. We are doing more things as a town. For example, during Municipal Awareness Week, we had an open house at our town hall, at our fire hall, We had a mental health walk partnering with Central Health. We had a volunteer appreciation night, again, partnering with Central Health. We are trying to bring more of this stuff to the forefront, partner with local groups, and make our town something to be proud of.
Mayor Tiller, can you use that money in conjunction with some provincial monies that are out there? Because some of those things can address the affordability issue. It's one thing to be able to build units, quite another for people to be able to afford them.
Correct. We're actually looking at partnering with the Cape Trails Development Association. They have access to other funds that we can do some affordable housing, because that is a big piece of that. Seniors housing, affordable housing, it's needed. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real trick here, isn't it? You know, we can put all the millions and billions of dollars in play, but if we end up doing what we've been doing in the past, you know, a keen focus on single-family detached homes with a price point at $339, then that's vastly different than what most people really do need.
No, we will be quite open to duplexes, threeplexes. There are some beautiful duplexes right near us in CWT, actually, that is being used and full and could probably use more. So we want to tap into that. We want to give people another option for somewhere to live. We have a lot of irons in the fire, Paddy. Just quickly on a different note, next week we have meetings to finalise a sole proprietor consultant for our water treatment plant. And that's a huge investment of provincial and federal money of $17 million. So once we finalise that next week, kickoff meetings will start, pilot projects will start to see what is the best water treatment for us. We're also planning, once we get some of this information out, I know we have citizens that are afraid that we're not going to be able to afford it. That is a fear, of course. We have to stay in budget. We have to make sure that we can run it after the fact. Once we get some of these information put together, there's always some human resources issues that are on the go. Once we get some information on that, we will be hosting a public meeting. We want to be totally transparent. We want the citizens to have their say, because if citizens are not comfortable with what you're doing, or they don't know what you're doing, then there's always going to be that misconception of, well, what is going on? And we want to be as transparent as possible.
I appreciate the time, Mayor Tiller. Interesting point you made there about water filtration systems. Some communities have actually overbuilt, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but that's the facts of the matter. We've got water filtration systems that have been in place in some communities that are still on water boil advisories because they don't have anyone to operate what they've already got in place. Mayor Tiller, appreciate the time. Congratulations on the money. Keep us in the loop.
Totally, Paddy. I appreciate you guys being out there for the small towns to be able to get the voice out. And again, when I know the exact date of the public meeting, I'd love to be able to use your venue again to put it out there along with our Facebook page and everything else.
No problem at all. Have a nice weekend.
You too, sir.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Mayor Mike Tiller out in New West Valley. Very quickly, quick PSA for the folks up the shore. There's a flea market at the Bay Bulls Church on Saturday, May 18th and Saturday, May 25th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's at the Bay Bulls Church. And of course, I must be pretty brain dead here today. Talk about players who won the Memorial Cup in this province. And we actually talked to this guy on this show and asked him about it. Bob Dean. Zach Dean's grandfather won a Memorial Cup in the 60s with the Hamilton Red Wings. I knew that, but boy, brain is moving slow this morning. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Kevin. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Doing grand. How you doing?
I'm not too bad, my friend.
Good.
Patty, I got some deep concerns this morning, and it's taken a lot for me to call in about this issue, but it's been bothering me for quite some time. I have some friends who is inmates at the Majesty's Penitentiary, and some of the conditions there that's going on, Patty, this is very, very serious. And the province, like I've been watching it on the House, it comes up the critic for that department brings issues forward, and there seems to be nothing gets done. And like you talk about humane things in this province, and if I was to take my dog and I was to do what they do to people, human beings in this province, Patty, I'd be put in jail or I'd be going before the court. And here the Crown themselves, the government, are pretending that things are running okay, everything is okay, but it's not okay, Patty.
It's not okay. I've been there for a no-holds-barred tour, and it's despicable and deplorable. It's just, the conditions are unbelievable. And people say, you do the crime, you do the time. Yeah, but doing the time is different when you do it in some sort of reasonable surroundings. returns with some sort of support, and some sort of rehabilitation, as opposed to just straight up punishment. So the government says they're going to put a few $1 million, I think it was $12 or $15 million over the course of a few years, to try to improve things like access for visitors and some recreational opportunities, what have you. But that is straight up Band-Aid stuff.
I'm going to tell you, Patty, visitors, there's no respect for family members. We've had visiting for this week for 2 different days, and the 2 different days that we were scheduled for visiting, it's a lockdown. You can't get in there because they don't have enough staff to bring visitors in. Another issue, Patty, that I'm aware of, and I'm going to be very careful here because I'm not mentioning any names, but there's a 79-year-old individual that's in there for very stupid charge, but he's there, and he's 79 years old. The man has cataracts on his eyes, and only for the prisoners inside that are looking after him and getting him his meals. Patty, the man is very feeble. He can hardly walk, and the boys comes and gets him his food and brings it to him and makes sure that he's looked after, helps him to get his shower and helps him to do whatever got to be done. And Patty, this gentleman the other day was trying to get a glass of water, and he went and he couldn't find a glass. He went over to the garbage can and picked up a Javex container or container with the cleaning fluids that was in it, and was going to go over to the sink, and one of the boys seen him going with it, and they sang out his name. You can't put water in that, you'll be poisoned. So they went and got him to go sit down in his feeble condition and got him a glass of water. Teddy, that man should be in hospital. He's going to die. He got 40-something pounds gone. The man is deteriorating out the earth. He needs to go in hospital, and they don't take it down there, Patty. And not only that, Patty, there's a lot of other stuff going on in that prison. Like downstairs where the kitchen for the food place is, there's a live with rats and mice. Coming up into the showers, Patty, they got those fish flies, they call them. Here you got people, they're getting showers, and with fish flies. There's a gentleman down there needs to go to a dentist. His jaw is swollen that much, Patty. He got a big lump on the side of his jaw, and they got no one to take him to the dentist. There's another guy down there, Patty, is sore. He got sores coming through his body, needs to go to the health science or in a hospital somewhere to be looked after. And here that man is down there with sores, and they don't even matter. No one to take you. We're sorry, we can't help you. And here there are people that are with mental health and addiction who could get help outside. Right? They're in there because of some foolish thing they did because of their mental health. And if they had help, Patty, their lives would change. But shoving somebody in a prison, putting them down in a cell with segregation, like they done with this 79-year-old man, left him down there for 30 days. He came back with 40 pounds gone, and he could hardly walk. And then they got the face in this province that if I abuse my dog or my cat or my animal, they'd come and arrest me. And here's the government doing this to an individual. I don't care what they've done. They're human beings, and they deserve better treatment. It's ridiculous what's going on in this province. And I'm going to tell you, Premier Fury and John Hogan, the minister, I know John really well. I'm ashamed to even say I know him. To let that go on in this province in this day and age, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I wonder what the status of the investigation is. I believe his first name was Seamus. I can't remember his last name. A 35-year-old who died in the prison not long ago. You know, they were talking about the aftermath of some injuries he suffered at the hands of a beating that he took, and on it goes. I don't know where the status of that is at this moment, but it would be nice to know. And yes, the conditions are terrible. And for folks who are yelling at the radio saying you don't care, the fact of the matter is that we're told by court officers 80% of the people that end up in the prison, and of course about 60% of them are on remand, haven't been found guilty of anything as of yet. So 80% going through the turnstiles are suffering with a mental health issue or an addictions related issue. That's a problem in and of itself. Secondly, and I say this all the time because I think it's fair and accurate, is it's fine to want people to be punished for committing crimes. I get it. But if the fact is that people are quite likely coming out worse than they went in, that's collectively bad for all of us. It just is. So the fellow who's in there today for committing a break and enter, If the next crime he commits is an armed robbery, then what are we talking about? If we're not trying to make sure we do what we can, now some people are going to be lifelong criminals, I get it, but if we're not going to try to do the best we can to ensure that we reduce the recidivism rate and we hopefully make the place a bit safer, then what's the argument there? How can anyone be opposed to that? So anyway, the prison conversation is a tricky one, but I understand where you're coming from, and it's absolutely fair that it is just incredibly terrible conditions. And like I said, they used to give out tours for members of the media, say for instance during lunchtime. And during lunchtime, the boys would be in their cells, as opposed to when they're roaming around the range itself, which I've seen. It's amazing. We've been down to the what do they call it? The segregation cells downstairs. I can't remember what the phrase they attached to it, but
the whole
down in the shoe. Exactly, Dave. Down in the special handling unit. It's just awful. It really, truly is.
Terrible. It's terrible. Like, it's terrible to let that go on in this province. And like, there's no place across Canada has a prison system like we have here in Newfoundland. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I believe it's probably...
Paddy, they're not doing nothing about it. This has been going on for years and years and years, and it's still going on. And it's worse now than it ever was.
I appreciate the concern and the time this morning, Kevin. Anything else you'd like to say before I take a break here?
No, Paddy, I just thank you for your service. It's just so upsetting when you see what's going on and everybody pretending they go out for an election. They're throwing money left, right, and center trying to get elected. But when it comes to the people of this province and looking after people, if somebody goes in a prison system and they comes out worse than they went in, Paddy, we've failed big time.
I appreciate the time, Kevin. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Paddy, for your time. You have a nice day.
You too. Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye. Boy, oh boy. All right, let's take a break right on time. When we come back, Elizabeth is there to talk about the lack of mental health services. Keith wants to talk about communications coming from the school board. And Pat wants to talk about the fixed link. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Keith, you're on the air. Keith on line number 1. You're on the air.
Oh, sorry, Patty.
No problem.
Technical difficulties.
No problem.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to call in today. For the last few months, through my COVID safety and education advocacy, I've been sending information emails chock full of credible information from multiple different reputable sources to pretty much everybody involved in healthcare and education here in the province. So one of the main groups that I've been sending information to is the NLTA. And as you know, they've been reporting on some pretty serious issues within the schools and, things that are causing disruptions such as increased violence, teacher shortages, high absences, and things like that. So through my sharing of information, I've also made pretty clear links to the damage that COVID-19 infections can do to the population, especially to students and teachers. And so far, from the NLTA and the Minister's Office, all of the executive for NL Schools, all the admin for NL Schools, I've gotten minimal response, pretty much ignored in the emails that I've sent. And it's very concerning.
What should the schools do about it, though? I mean, shouldn't that responsibility lie with health?
Now, it should. However, so also in my travels, I've asked the school district to provide me with the set of protocols, right? So they're saying that they follow public health guidance and they have a set of protocols to follow when it comes to COVID-19 and other pathogens. So I've asked them for, what is that list, right? So I would assume, as a parent, as a teacher myself, I would assume that the district, in 2022, when we declared COVID-19 was mild and we were going to allow it to spread and we're going to take away masking and everything else, at that time, I assumed, okay, they're going to have some form of, formal protocols for, what if cases go off the charts again? What if there's a new variant? What if there's a new virus? Whatever. I assume there was some form of, protocols communicated from public health to the school district. And I'm still waiting on it, but I'm just not seeing it, right? So I'm under the suspicion that there isn't a set of protocols. So I've submitted an ATIP with the government to see what those protocols are, right? Because if you're saying, we're following a certain set of protocols and we have different markers for different measures to trigger and things like that, you have to have it. one, and two, you should be able to share it with a member of the public who's asking you, what are you following for safety? So the information that I've sent all of these, entities, the NLTA, they're talking about increased violence in schools. Okay, so COVID-19 proven to cause brain damage. Now, this is in any age. It can happen in an asymptomatic infection, a mild, quote unquote, infection, whatever. So COVID-19 can cause brain damage. So as a teacher, most of my job when I worked as a teacher was with kids with specialized needs. And what we did, a big part of our job was, helping the students with, emotional dysregulation and their ability to cope with, society and the school environment and things like that, and helping them with behaviors. So problematic behavior, and we really picked apart their different behaviors and try to find the reasons and the antecedents for, said behaviors. So what we're seeing now is we have a population that's been reinfected, multiple times with a virus that is proven. Now, it's not theory, it's not speculation, it's proven to cause brain damage, and we're seeing a rise in violent incidents within schools. So also on top of that, you also have a constant carousel of illness. So everybody knows that kids are sick more often now. The general public is sick more often now. However, for some reason, people are just willing to go, maybe it was just a bad month, but it hasn't been. It's been a bad 18 months. So we have these clear links to a virus that causes brain damage, and then you're seeing a spike in violent behaviors, and then the NLTA is talking about it in the media, which is fine. Of course, bring it to the attention of the government and the public. However, when you're given multiple credible sources from, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the Statistics Canada, these aren't opinion pieces. These are proven through research, through, rigorous studies, information. When you're given all that information, you completely ignore it. I mean, it's very concerning, right? So we're also seeing a teacher shortage, right? Like most of Canada, most of the world. Well, there's a huge study out of New Zealand showing that teachers are at the number one at-risk group for long COVID, which, as we know from the Statistics Canada report that came out in December, there's, millions of people in Canada right now suffering from long COVID, and with each wave, the chances of developing long COVID goes up. So 1 in every 10 infections can lead to long COVID. So every 3 infections, your chances of long COVID are about 38%. So we have all of this information available, and I'm sharing it with people who are tasked with the safety of students, and I'm being completely ignored. And it's very concerning, and I'd like some answers as to why this information is just being discarded, in the junk mail probably. And I'm not going to stop sharing this information with these entities because they are responsible and obligated to provide a safe learning environment for every student in this province.
Yeah, I still don't know what role the school would or should be playing on this front. It really does feel and sound like a public health related matter, maybe in conjunction with the NLTA, maybe in conjunction with the Department of Education, but some sort of lead coming from someone on the health side. I get where you're coming from, but I just don't know what an individual school could or should be doing here.
Every single one of those schools it's their decision to implement any measures. So I found that out through another ATIP because I was being played ping pong with by the government and Newfoundland schools, because every time I said, whose decision is it to make to put masking back in place or to put different measures back in place, I was told it was the other one. So I did an ATIP, and it is the decision of solely the Newfoundland schools. Now, I brought this up to the health minister's the education minister's office, and again, I was told we're following public health. Well, here's the thing. We were told by public health, we were told by Chief Medical Health Officer Janice Fitzgerald that we would follow emerging evidence, we would follow the epidemiology and the way that COVID went, and we have the tools and we were going to use them. However, we're not using any tools. We have locked away the toolbox. We're not even considering that there's a reason to use the tools because the general public is not aware of all of this information. So if you're going to say that a virus is mild, if you're going to say, there's nothing we can do, it's not our decision, when it clearly is, it is the school district's decision whether or not to put in masking. Now, if you're following a certain guideline and the evidence, the natural evidence in your environment is contradictory to what you're being told by public health, you have an obligation to ask questions. So if you had black mold in your gym and, someone came in and said, yeah, no, it's all gone, and then you walked into the gym and you saw it, you would make a complaint or you would ask questions and you would say, why is this black mold still here when you told me that it wasn't? Right? So this is what's happening right now. It's kind of like everybody's just pushing aside this, elephant in the room, but it's unacceptable. We have millions of kids in the United States with long COVID. Newfoundland kids are not immune to this virus, and they're not immune to the damage that it can cause. So, the kids haven't had a vaccine in almost 2 years. So what are we doing to protect these kids from this virus, right? And when I'm asking these questions and I'm sending a lot of credible information, Patty, I can't see how over 500 people, because it's over 500 people that I sent in the school district information. I can't see how over 500 people can ignore the natural evidence that they're seeing within the schools with the high absence rates, the rise in violence, the teacher shortage. You're seeing way more teachers out way longer than they used to be. You can't even provide a consistent environment for the kids to learn in or the teachers to teach in because there's too many people out sick all the time with every virus that's going around, while we still play the game of, COVID is mild, there's nothing to worry about. And long COVID keeps compounding. So somebody has to start advocating for these kids. The COVID is mild. If anybody would like to debate it, if they would like to present information as to how they're going to prove that COVID is mild, because I have mountains of information to prove the other way, because it is not mild. And we haven't been shown that information, but the kids have been sent back to schools and sent on a constant carousel of illness, and the parents are none the wiser because they haven't been shared the information that should have been passed on by public health, by the chief medical health officer, by the government, by everyone involved. This mirrors, Patty, the tainted blood scandal of the 1980s and 90s, where we were told by blood services, no, it's not in the blood bank. Don't worry about it. And then thousands and thousands of people got infected with HIV and hepatitis and everything else. So this is unacceptable. There's too many professionals involved in this school system who are obligated to take the safety of every kid in that school at the highest regard. It's not just their choice. They have to provide safe school for all these kids. That's a right. That's in the Schools Act, and it's not happening. So I'd like some answers. I'd like some clarification. If someone can provide me the information that shows that COVID-19 is mild, then I'll be quiet. Until then, they have an obligation to protect kids, and they're not doing it.
Appreciate the time, Keith.
Thanks, Patty. Take care. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye. Am I taking that one caller that you suggested, or will I take the break? Let's go ahead and take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the programme. Let's go to line number 4 to get more to the Liberal member for Burgeo-Lapoil. He's the Minister of Industry, Energy and Technology. That's Andrew Parsons. Minister Parsons, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
Well, it's the Friday of a long weekend, so yeah, I think I'll be doing okay.
Yeah, I'll be doing okay in an hour and a half. Okay. So yesterday's announcement, I was thinking that there might be something new brought to the table, but is it fair to say that yesterday's announcement was simply tying a bow on what we already knew?
Absolutely. In many ways, it was the culmination of something that we had signaled very clearly that we were going to do, but it was the official, conclusion of that, rate mitigation of what we were doing to ensure that Muskrat Falls costs were not going to grow tremendously on our watch, and that we were able to finally get this through. So that's what it was, because again, a lot of people still don't know. A lot of times you have to remind people of what you have done. So it was a good day.
Okay. So for the ratepayer, feels good. I mean, I didn't want my $300 bill to be a $500 bill, but the $740 million, at some point when we're just shuffling monies around, the government doesn't have any money. It's all my money or our money, whether it even comes from oil revenues or whatever the case may be. But where's the $740 million come from annually?
So the 740, and look, I'll be the first one to say, I was talking actually to Tim Powers yesterday, that this is extremely complex stuff, and I've never pretended to be an expert. The $740 million is just the cost of covering the Muskrat Falls project, which we had to do, as you know, after commissioning was official. The rate mitigation itself is a $2 billion project till 2030. All this is coming basically from three sources. One of them is the federal rate mitigation funds that we agreed to a few years back, $5.2 billion agreement. The second part is that it's the dividends, it's the money that Hydro would be receiving that normally they would transmit back to government, to go into Treasury towards everything that we use. And the third part is that obviously we as a province would chip in if we had to. So that's where this is coming from. That's the three sources. And look, the fact is, any government, all governments do is deal with the people's money. But if we didn't come up with the rate mitigation agreement, if we didn't find this way forward, going back to what you said earlier, yes, when people got that July bill of $300, instead of it going to $500, it's going to go up $7, which is a pretty big win in my estimation.
We all can understand what the rate mitigation plans have looked like in the past. So the federal Conservatives, $5 billion in a federal loan guarantee, then the Liberals with $3 billion, and then the 5.2, which included a $1 billion loan, a $1 billion extension of the federal loan guarantee, and $3.2 billion associated with Hibernia. I've never been able to fully understand exactly what that 3.2 looks like, how it's spent or how it's gathered. Can you help break that down?
So, again, the same thing. That's more, it wouldn't necessarily go through our department. That would go, I think that's mainly a finance matter. I know that Siobhan Cody was actually trying to get on to be able to talk about that and other things. So she would probably do a better job of explaining the net profit interest, where it goes. But what I would say, that's not a part of this. That is something separate that goes to the Treasury that is used. But in terms of how we receive it, when we receive it, that one's a bit beyond me.
Okay, so yesterday's press conference, if the ratepayer is going to take it away as good news, even though we all know about how governments gather money or collect monies, but was Gary Murray from Newfoundland Power invited? Because one of the big part of the conversation that was not included in the press conference between yourself and Jennifer Williams is the fact that it might have an annual cap of 2.25% until 2030, but that does not mean that that's going to be the only increase we see. So was Gary Murray invited?
No. Why would Gary Murray be invited? So that's a good segue to go to this point after, which I would note Newfoundland Power within a couple hours put out a release talking about what they think will happen on July 1st. So, number one, yesterday was not about rate increases. It was not about just the general state of things. It was about the finalization of the Muskrat Falls costs that we had to cover to the tune of $740 million. So, no, Gary, and again, I've talked to Gary a lot on this. In fact, we talked yesterday, and Gary, and we would have briefed them in advance. But they weren't a part of that announcement yesterday. That was nothing to do with Newfoundland Power. Now, Newfoundland Power is going to be bringing forward, and they have brought forward, their own two applications for rate increases. They also have to go to the PUB. I believe one of them is actually going to be a public hearing, as it should be. So it will be Newfoundland Power's job to explain why they want a rate increase and what is making up that rate increase.
The reason I ask is because I think I can speak for the majority of ratepayers, is that when I get my bill, I don't care why it costs as much as it does. I just want to know, how much I have to pay based on Muskrat or the PUB's adjudication of rate hike applications. That's the big thing here, because yes, we can talk about Bill 1661, which is interesting given the fact that the moratorium on wind has been lifted. We're able to see the province control Muskrat-related rates because of legislation tabled, but people only care about how much the bill is, not whether or not the fine-tooth comb of the PUB versus the government evaluating rates.
Absolutely. But I do think people want to know how the bill is made up. So, for instance, we have actually asked, as a government, break out what this rate mitigation, what these Muskrat costs look like. Break out what your costs look like. I would love to see on any bill It's like when I see a grocery bill, I don't want to just see the total. I want to see what the items that made it up. Well, on my power bill, you better believe I want to see how it's made up, to see what government is doing to keep the costs low. And we've asked Newfoundland Power. Now, I'll let Newfoundland Power explain why or why not. Why won't they do that? Because I think it's a necessary thing. I can tell you the Premier has asked directly, and so have I. The other thing here, let's keep in mind, when we do these rate increases, and this is why it's important that it goes to a public hearing, what portion of this rate increase for Newfoundland Power is going to operational costs or the costs of labor? What is going to the rate of return to them as a private company? What is going to executive compensation? What is going to all of these things that make up that 7%?
I think we have a base understanding of that, though. I mean, Dennis Brown, the province's consumer advocate, he's done a pretty good job in breaking that stuff down. You know, whether we talk about a rate of return increase to 9.85% from where it currently is, you know, when there are audited financial statements, we can see the compensation afforded to executives at Newfoundland Power or Fortis at large.
But I don't think it's my job as a government member, as someone who did not, you know, who's not a part of executive compensation, who's not a part of an internal rate of return, so that their take for their shareholders, not Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, their shareholders, goes from 48 million to 55 million. It's not my job to explain why that is. My job was to explain, look, we went, negotiated the deal. We are taking Hydro's dividend to us, which we would have used on a bunch of other things that people want, our health care and everything else. We explain what we did for people, but it is not my job to explain why Newfoundland Power is doing what theirs. It's their job to do that at a public hearing in front of the Public Utilities Board, for which Dennis Brown, consumer advocate, will be there. Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro will be a part of it. That's theirs. So that's why it was a little bit frustrating yesterday. Yes, you know, we've worked years on this. We are saving people money that they otherwise would have, you know, again, it's a pretty big chunk that they would have been, you know, tasked with because of Muskrat Falls. We can get into all that too. And the 2 hours later had this clarification. So when I see a headline, it wasn't talking about what we had done. It was talking about Newfoundland Power and what they say will be done, which is not my decision.
I suppose it could be fairly labelled your job or the government's job to talk about the role of a for-profit entity like Fortis and Newfoundland Power being involved as intimately as they are and raising the amount of money they are as pretty much the only game in town. You know, I think it's a textbook definition of a monopoly. I know Hydro is involved also in some distribution and what have you, but would that be fairly constituted as part of your job?
Oh, I can love to explain, but that's where the people that are part of that deserve to go in front of the Public Utilities Board to explain what they're doing. At the end of the day, the thing is, I can try to explain it, but I'm not a part of that decision-making process. And I'm a big fan of, I have no problem explaining something that I do or that I'm a part of. God knows I've had to do enough of it for good and for bad since I've been in public life. But when I'm not a part of that decision, then I find it difficult to explain because I don't know. I don't know why is the rate of return what it is? Who does this money go to? What are the different things that cost? Again, I know if an MHA was to raise their salary, I'm going to have to explain it. But I can't explain what's going on. I can't explain these things in Newfoundland Power because it's not my decision.
Inside the world of hydrogen, unless you have anything else you'd like to add regarding Muskrat?
Well, I would want people to realize that I think yesterday was the culmination of years of hard work. And I know when I get my power bill, and I'd love to see it broken down, I'm very happy that it's only going to go up, you know, the $7 on the theoretical $300 bill rather than an extra $200. I know I'm going to appreciate that, and I appreciate there's a lot of people that made that happen. So yesterday was certainly a very good news announcement. On to the next topic.
Well, I suppose maybe some of these questions are better posed to Jennifer Williams, but, you know, some of the outstanding Muskrat issues, because it's not simply about what the power bill might look like, because we're still not fully briefed on reliability issues and the turbine at Muskrat, whether or not it's more than one turbine, and all the rest of these types of matters. Can you speak to any of that, or should I put all of those to Jennifer Williams?
I can speak to it vaguely, but my understanding actually is that Jennifer Williams, who I think has been doing a bang-up job over there, Jennifer's job is to come on, and she wants to come on actually today and talk about this. I know just from when I get briefed by them that actually they are, you know, above target of where they thought they might be when it comes to reliability, when it comes to delivery. You know, right now I could go into, and again, sorry for me explaining, you know, they've exceeded the Canadian average for availability. this unit is not out of service, things are working fine, and that they've had strong performance, and actually that Holyrood usage has been down. But I can tell you, Jennifer will explain it all a heck of a lot better than I will do.
Okay, let's move on to hydrogen. So, I mean, the province is all in. I mean, it's quite clear that the province is quite bullish on these wind, hydrogen, ammonia for export projects. But one of the thoughts inside the Hydrogen Development Action Plan talks about not only training, jobs, regulatory framework, but talks about domestic markets. What domestic markets?
So this is what's being explored now. The reality is that North America as a whole, not just Newfoundland and Labrador, we are behind Europe when it comes to the usage of hydrogen. If we're talking about hydrogen service stations, right now they are already moving into that. Whether it's heavy utility, if we're talking about heavy transit, we're talking about offshore. They are moving very quickly into it. Plus the fact that they are actually using the hydrogen internally as their power source. We are not there, but we feel it's incumbent on us right now. The projects that we have in the queue are working on export. But if we're going to be talking about export, we have to look at what are the opportunities to use it internally. Again, we're very lucky compared to other provinces in that, our grid is heavily green. It's 92%, whereas other provinces are trying to green their grid. But again, why wouldn't we consider using hydrogen internally, whether it's for production or what are the other, utilities of this? Why wouldn't we look at that? So that's something that's going to be explored. We'll work with our academia, public institutions, as well as the people that are in the business now on the supply and service side.
Fair enough, because there's a couple of thoughts come to mind. If the province is seemingly bullish on onshore wind, the proposals that are currently in place, the amendments that are being made to the Atlantic Accord to allow for potential offshore wind, I've never really heard the province and or Miss Williams talk about wind as a form of supplementing our grid currently, because we're looking at 150 megawatt diesel generator at Holyrood and other recommendations that are coming from Hatch. So is wind part of those forecasted demand side issues? Because I've never heard anyone really say that.
It's absolutely been in discussion. In fact, Hydro was doing a wind integration study to look at how could we incorporate wind into our grid. And again, that's one of the things that the proponents also want to talk about, is that they're going to be producing and how can we do trade-offs and things like that. I can't tell you what the results of that study said. It's actually absolutely been discussed, and we need to discuss it. And we need to talk about not just the big projects that we always get excited about, but the smaller scale renewable projects, whether it be wind, solar, you name it. Small scale, I think, could be the answer to a lot of the issues that we have, especially in isolated communities where getting big power lines is extremely costly and onerous. Let's look at these other solutions. Maybe wind could be a bigger part of that. In fact, we're looking at that. There was just one done in Maine. There's more to that. But again, where are we on the wind integration study? Jennifer could probably explain a little more on that, but I can tell you it has been a discussion.
I appreciate the time. Now, the very two quick ones, which I always put to you, because we're still, or I guess I can only speak for myself, desperately waiting for some more information from the 2041 group. I read Quebec papers all the time. They are non-stop talking about it. Non-stop. Whether it be the Upper Churchill, Gull Island, what have you. So the two questions, 2041 update and Gull update, please.
So what I would say is that 2041, look, the discussions continue to happen. Everybody knows it's a sensitive subject, and the minute you say something, it starts the conversations, which don't always lead to positive outcomes. What I would say is that we've tasked some very competent people to help lead the team. They continue to talk. But a lot of this is not just breaking down the specifics of this when we get into what the actualities are. There is a political component to this, and it's driven by the political climates of both provinces. So, there's one thing for us to talk about, there's another thing for Premier Legault to talk about it, and that absolutely forms a part of this. It's not the best thing, but that's where we are. So, look, they continue to move forward. That's about all I can say. That's about all I'm willing to say, except that, look, we think it's positive for us. We think that we hold a very good position. We think when you talk about power development that you have to start planning for 10 years down the road today. But at the same time, the Premier's made very clear that we're not just going to make a deal for the sake of a deal. It has to be It has to be, and it has to be seen as a positive move, a positive deal for us.
Would you be willing to share the results of the work done by, I believe it was Gary Smith and the 2041 team, not with negotiating with Quebec, but exactly what the implications are? Because some people think it's the golden egg. Some people think it's the panacea. When I'm pretty sure that's not true. I mean, equity stakes don't change after 41. It'd just be, renegotiating price point for a kilowatt hour. So can the province tell us exactly what 41 looks like? Because unless we have a real general knowledge of what that means, no one will be able to know whether or not we've struck a good deal or whatever good constitutes here, whether it be redressed back to 69 or for the next 17 years. So do you think that's helpful information that you can share?
Absolutely. Look, just a couple points I would make on that. Number one, I agree with you. There is no silver bullet to anything and any subject on any project. And 2041 is no different. 2041 is not the be-all, end-all to fixing everything because there's so many complexities to it, including the fact that Quebec has a large stake in this. I do think it has many significant positive implications for that, which leads to the second point, which is, yes, part of this being communicated as a positive deal is showing people the specifics of it. But you're not, the same way you don't show cars during a game, you're willing to show them after or when we get into that. That's a part of it. But I think the Premier has actually indicated in the legislature that obviously we would be willing to have that debate in the House. I think that's necessary. So I'll leave it at that for now. But overall, I generally remain optimistic about this and about many things. I still remain optimistic about the possibilities, but there's a hell of a lot of hard work left to do yet.
I appreciate the time, Minister Parsons. Thank you.
All the best.
Take care. Bye-bye. Sandra Parsons, Minister of Industry, Energy, Technology. Break time. When we come back, Pat, you stay right there. He wants to talk about the fixed link. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Oh, my. Line number 2. Pat, you're on the air.
Oh, hello, Pat.
Hi there.
Yes, busy morning this morning.
So far.
Yeah. I was just listening to Minister Parsons on the 2041 issue and the committee they have established. And that's what we wanted our government, our provincial government, to establish a committee to look into pursuing a tunnel across the Strait of Belle-Isle and a Trans-Canada Highway standard along the north shore of Quebec and down the northern peninsula of our province to provide another major transportation route into this province.
Most recent numbers aren't great. I know between the Canada Infrastructure Bank and the province, some $500,000 has been spent on looking at next steps. And then, the work that Hatch came in and did, updating information from 2004. Yeah. They did a report in 2018. Yeah. And then in came Arup to update the numbers. And they're really not encouraging, are they?
Well, the Hatch study from 2004, that was skewered from the beginning to look at a rail tunnel and using a tunnel machine. So if you want a study to come back with numbers that don't look good, skewer it from the beginning.
I'm talking about the most recent report, not Hatch, the report done by Arup.
Well, if they had took the 30-plus tunnels that have been built in Norway, and the most recent one was 14.4 kilometers in Stavanger, undersea tunnels. That tunnel was opened in 2019. It was on budget and on schedule, and it was built with the drill and blast method. 2 tunnel tubes, 18-meter tubes, 10 meters apart. And they could have took the plans from that and said, can we do this under the Strait of Belle-Isle, What I'm saying is that what I'm upset about is that our government, our provincial government, has not even bothered to pursue this major transportation route that could be established in our province. I'm not saying I'm not mad with them because they haven't done it, because they haven't even pursued it and looked into it. Ever since they've been elected, all the conditions have been in place for them to do this. The Canada Infrastructure Bank has been in place. There's trillions of private money there waiting to invest in government projects. The federal Liberal Party has said that they would like to see this project done. So the conditions have been in place to do it, but they haven't even looked into it. They haven't established a committee and said, as well, the province of Quebec wants to develop that highway along their North Shore to service that area of their province.
We're sort of at the mercy of the province of Quebec to complete Route 138. I don't know what anyone could actually do at this stage.
Well, our province could work with the province of Quebec. The province of Quebec would like to have our province there working with them and go to the federal government and say this project would be a great nation-building project for our country. To open up Newfoundland and Labrador with another major transportation route, to open up the North Shore. Quebec would love for us to go with on this and present a joint proposal to the federal. And then the thing about it, Patty, is that there's really, this could be done, possibly could be done without any new money. I mean, we are, as a province, we're paying approximately $10 million a year to subsidize the ferry across the Strait of Belle Isle. That would be wiped out. We could devote that $10 million annually, and that would be our payment. So
$10 million. The estimated cost at this moment in time is $4.8 billion.
Yeah, our payment as a province. The Quebec would have a payment. The federal government would have a payment. The revenue from the tunnel would be involved as well.
It's hard to estimate that, though, isn't it, Pat? I mean, the difference between what Hatch said and what Arup said is there's a wide gap there. They're talking about a revenue shortfall every year, says Arup. So I don't know which report we should be leaning on here, but the most recent numbers, even if you talk about Route 138, I mentioned that I read the Quebec papers because I'm interested in the hydro conversation. They talk about Route 138 in their papers as well. They say they've got estimated numbers, and this is not Arup or Hatch or anyone saying it. These are estimates brought forward by the provincial government of Quebec. They're talking about the complete 138 is going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 billion.
Yes. Well, I mean, that can look. The Trans-Canada Highway was built across this country to move goods and services and people, and so this highway can be built too. And another source of revenue could be tolls as well. I mean, tolls have been used in Nova Scotia. They're still being used, no, I for one wouldn't mind paying a toll to use that highway. If that highway was in place, and there's many others.
There's going to be a toll if it's ever built. You can bet your bottom dollar there'll be a toll.
Yeah, well, I mean that's fine. Let the people that are using it, pay for it.
Yeah, same as going on the Confederation Bridge or some of the tolls in Nova Scotia. Yeah.
Right, but what I'm upset about is that our government has not pursued this, and that's a failure of leadership. Why have they not pursued this? They could have been instrumental in having another major transportation route established for this province that would grow tourism exponentially. That would even grow our population. It would grow the construction and the renovation of summer or seasonal residences in this province. It could grow population. It could grow manufacturing, and even the high tech industries would benefit. The people working in high tech would be much more conducive to coming and living in this province if they had a 24/7, 365 connection all the time.
I suppose depends on where you live, right? I mean, I don't imagine there'll be a whole lot of traffic heading west if you live in St. John's necessarily, unless you desperately needed your vehicle.
Oh, sure.
I do have to get going here pretty quickly, but even inside of these reports, it does not have a careful examination of the road upgrades that would have to take place on the Great Northern Peninsula if the numbers that anyone suggests would be coming, which is not even included in the estimate for what it would take to build the tunnel and how many years it would take to build the tunnel. So that would be hundreds of millions of dollars at least if we're talking about the upgrades on the Pen.
But it could be done the same as the Confederation Bridge was done. The federal government started saving money right away as soon as they opened that bridge, because they agreed to pay $35-40 million, whatever the subsidy was, annually for 35 years, no inflation. So they started saving money right away because they didn't have to deal with inflation of wages and other expenses to subsidize that ferry. The same thing could happen here. If 60% of the traffic, and one of the studies done by Memorial University was that 60% of the traffic coming to this province would use the new route with the tunnel. Trucking would use it. It would make it less expensive to get goods into this province. So we would all benefit. We would all benefit. Everyone living here would benefit.
Pat, I'm late for the news. I'll give you a couple of more seconds to wrap it up before I have to go, sir.
Yeah, I'm upset that our government a failure of leadership for not looking into this, not establishing this. Why are they not doing it? Is it because of special interest groups that don't want them to do it? So they're protecting, certain interest groups, but for the whole province is suffering as a result. And we haven't even talked about the people of Labrador having 24/7, 365 connection to their health care and to business and education on the island. So our government has failed to pursue this, and it could have been done.
Appreciate the time, Pat. I'm late for the news. Thanks for the call.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our new construction trades training program with the Association of New Canadians. And Gary Sands, he's with the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers. He's the Senior VP talking public policy. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Senior VP Public Policy and Advocacy at the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers. That's Gary Sands. Good morning, Gary. You're on the air.
Hi, glad to be joining you this morning.
Happy to have you on the show. Of course, we're all pained when we have to walk into a grocery store with the prices on the shelves, but after 6 months of negotiations, now it looks like Loblaws is willing to come to the table and sign on to the Grocery Code of Conduct. What's changed, do you think, to bring Loblaws on side?
We tweaked some of the language of the code that we had developed. The rest of the industry had developed and provided more clarity to them on some of the things that they had concerns about. But we made no substantive changes to the code and what the intent of many of the principles were. So, I really don't want to speculate publicly as to what their motives are. I'm just delighted that they're now supporting the code, and I think this is a huge milestone for the industry and for Canada when you have, Canada's largest grocery chain now saying they're supporting this Grocery Code of Conduct, and we're a couple of feet now away from the finish line. We just have to bring Walmart on board.
Right, and of course it's intended to come into effect 1st of June of 2025. One of the key issues of concern for the Loblaws of the world and Walmarts was the dispute resolution process. Exactly what is that, and what's been tweaked there to bring Loblaws on side?
Well, the dispute resolution that we developed was just that, there would be an adjudicator hired to settle disputes. If there's a complaint made under the code, any of the principles that are outlined, and one of the things they were, I guess, confused about is they thought that the adjudicator would have the right to tell a retailer they had to accept a price increase from one of their suppliers. And suppliers, just for your listeners, that's what we call the food manufacturers. Well, there was never any intent for us in the code to have the code force any retailer to accept a price increase. I can tell you the independent grocers I represent would never have agreed to that. It should be everyone's right whether they want to accept a price increase, just like a consumer should have the right. They don't want to buy a product if they think it's priced too high. We tweaked the language to clarify that was absolutely not the intent, and so if that helped, it obviously helped address their concern, and we're as I said, I'm just happy that we're now where we are.
Look, the Competition Bureau has talked about the lack thereof inside the grocery business, and one of the things they point to is not just the fact that the big five, as they're referred to, gobble up about 80% of the retail business. It's also the problem for the small and medium-sized grocers in the world of supply and distribution. So what's the complication there? Because if the big purchaser, they get first dibs, they get to really call the shots. They're playing the tune to the suppliers and distributors. What's the problem representing your group?
Well, you're right about the size of the market, and but let me just explain what the code will try to do about that issue of supply. Okay. We have about 6,900 independent grocers in Canada. Many of them are in rural and remote communities, and also service Indigenous communities. We've got a couple of our most notable members, Coleman's, Powell Supermarket in Newfoundland, Labrador, who provide that kind of service to communities. And in some of those areas, they're the only grocery store in that community. There's no chain coming in. And so if they're not getting fair supply of goods, of products, that's an issue of food security. That means that the people in those communities aren't getting the same choice of products that they would in some of the bigger centers, bigger cities. And so what has happened in the past is that if a product's in high demand or low supply, low availability of it, the chains would come to the suppliers and say, we know we have an agreement here to, give us 1,000 cases of whatever it is. We want 2,000. And if you don't comply, we'll impose some sort of a penalty or a charge. And the supplier, unfortunately, would divert away from the independent grocers, even though they had agreements, and that meant that we weren't getting fair supply. Now, under the code, that practice will end. Whatever is in your agreement is in your agreement, and the code specifically says that, suppliers have to pay attention to the orders they have from all retailers. And, as I said, that's something that we were really pleased to see. And I would add, one of the biggest differences between the Canadian code that we've developed and the grocery codes of conduct that we have in other countries, those codes are all just retailer codes. They only apply to the big retailers. The Canadian code applies to everyone. And so it applies to the suppliers, it applies to the wholesalers, the distributors, and we think that principle of reciprocity is really important, and we think it's one that's going to really benefit consumers.
I don't know if this is your bailiwick, but I'll give it a shot, Gary. One of the things when we talk about prices coming back to earth, and there's a lot of issues there, whether it be fires and floods and droughts and the rest, but the concept of me paying the same or more for less volume, the concept of shrinkflation, how are we going to address that in the future? Because I don't know if there's any type of legislation or grocery code of conduct is going to be able to impact that, because we're at the mercy of the supplier. So how should Canadians view that concept? For me, that's extremely frustrating. Labeling is a problem. I'm paying the same amount of money or more for less volume. So what should we think about that? What can be done about that?
Yeah, I'm. I don't want to sound like a politician, but I really can't weigh in on that one. That's an issue that you're going to have to ask the suppliers about. We understand the concern there, because remember, it's the retailer that's usually the one on the front line with the consumer answering these questions. So the concern you're raising, we hear about from consumers all the time, but there's nothing we can do either. I mean, we're the customer. We get the product, we sell the product, and we don't package the product. And that's really a question that would have to go to the suppliers. It's certainly not something that would be covered in the code of conduct. I want to emphasize that the code doesn't determine what prices are going to be set between the retailer and the supplier. It doesn't get into that, how big the package should be, and those are things that have to be negotiated in a free market between the retailer and the supplier. So I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer, but it's just something I'm not equipped to be able to speak to.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any type of pushback, whether it be from your organization and or the big guys, because you are on the front lines. It's the don't shoot the messenger, but in this case, it's hard to reach out and grab Nestle. It's hard to reach out and grab some of the cereal companies or whatever the case may be, or the people that fill the chip bags full of air. So I was just wondering if your group had said, we have to have a concerted effort towards dealing with this issue, because you are the folks taking the fire.
Well, you're raising a good point about the whole issue of prices. I mean, I'm not here to defend Loblaws or Walmart or any of the chains, but when prices are going up and those issues are raised, there's no sales representatives from any of those companies standing at the door of a grocery store explaining all of this to the customer. It's the retailer who ends up having to explain it. So, it is an issue we continue to raise with our suppliers, just letting them know what customers are saying, and I think they understand that. I do want to emphasize, though, and I really do think it's important to say that in terms of food prices, I'm not going to point the finger at suppliers either. We are getting a myriad of price increases for sure from the suppliers, and when you're an independent grocer on a margin of 2%, you've got to pass that on, or you're not going to be an independent grocer next month. But there are so many things that are impacting prices from you and you talked about a couple of them, the wildfires, climate change, in other jurisdictions where we import a lot of product from, that we've seen has driven prices through the roof, and for some commodities, the war in Ukraine, rising transportation costs and fuel costs. I could go on and on. It's like the four horsemen of the apocalypse have taken up careers in the food industry, and there's just nothing that we can do about that, and in many cases, neither can the supplier.
Yeah, I mean, it's just infuriating because, like most things, what we latch onto is the political messaging as opposed to policy and realities that are impacting the price of groceries and everything else under the sun. So in one corner, if we axe the carbon tax, then everything's all coming back to earth, when in fact, there's just so many different things that contribute to the price of whatever it is I consume and I purchase at a grocery store. Gary, really appreciate the time this morning. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I think you've touched on all of them, and I just would add for your listeners, many of the things that we're concerned about, with pricing, we're seeing them around the world in other countries. So I know it's tough. I'm a consumer too. I have to buy groceries, but I can tell you the retailers, especially the ones in Newfoundland, Labrador, the independents that we have, they do the best they can to provide the best service they can at the best price, and we're just doing everything we can to respond to consumers. Appreciate your time, Gary. Stay in touch. Thank you. You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Gary Sands, Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers, Senior VP of Policy and Advocacy. Let's take a break. Welcome back. John, you're next to talk about a trades program at the ANC. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the Association for New Canadians, instructor for the Construction Trades Training Program. I believe he's also the head man at Allied Construction, and that'll be John Shepherd on 3. John, you're on the air.
Hey, Petty. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to do it.
So, I wanted to call in today and have a chat about our program with the Association for New Canadians. It's called Build Your Future, Construction Trades Training Program. And what we do is we offer an 8-week theory and practical class that's open to refugees from a number of different countries. We've actually had over 15 countries represented so far over the last year and a half. And over that 8 weeks, we go over different things that would prepare students for the construction industry. We go over tools and how to operate hand tools and power tools. We do wood framing. We get into concrete footings and formwork, and go over the different trades that might be available to them when they graduate. And we also get into what it's like to work in the industry and discussing RRSP plans and insurance and union versus non-union and safety requirements. and all these things of what to expect, which, in a lot of cases, maybe even some new students coming out of school might not know about. And you can imagine now as coming into a new culture and try to understand these things, that we find that class in particular really gets a lot of interest from our students. And then we also get into training with some different partners, doing resume building. We do WIMIS, fall arrest, first aid, and we even do some aerial work platform. So the idea is that we have our students prepared and ready to be placed then for a 12-week internship. And we look to construction companies in the industry. It can be general constructors, but also subcontractors, painters, cladding companies, mechanical, electrical, drywall, civil.
So are any of the participants bringing any past experience in the trades?
So they do. Some of our students will have past experience, specifically a lot of people doing tile work, painting, plastering, but we like to do a mix. So there's usually, since the word has gotten out within the community, we're now up to like 150 to 200 applications for every class. We only accept 20. So out of that 20, we like to get a good mix of people that have no experience, that want to get that training and get that help to get in the field, and also accept a few people as well who have had the experience in their home countries and want to get gainful employment.
So when it comes to next steps, and gainful employment would be that next step, is your program so-called accredited? Because, if I'm a construction company, then hiring people who came out of vocational schools that have accreditation and a track record is one thing. How about your class?
Yeah, so the students will get a certificate after the full program is completed, and we have had discussions with the Carpentry Apprentice Training Program in that there are hours that we do and the practical training we do could go towards the first year. So if any of those students want to actually go down the road of the apprenticeship program and even get into the College of North Atlantic or other carpentry millwright to continue their education, those opportunities are available. So yes, there's a certificate and the ability to apply for funding. So we do, as a part of our program, offer funding $15 an hour up to 30 hours per week for 12 weeks. And there's no application process. We sign an agreement. They send in the hours at the end of the month, and then the ANC will reimburse. But then there's also all kinds of other federal and provincial government programs available for these students as well for subsidy. What we found, and with our company, Allied Construction, we've got 15 employees now that are graduates of this program. And for us, the first few we had a subsidy, but after that, I'd rather the subsidy go to some other newer companies to get some smaller companies on board. But for us, it's been such a positive experience to have these new workers on that bring a real positive attitude. They are eager to come to work every day. I can count on one hand, the amount of missed days between the 14 employees we have on with us now. And over the time, we've seen our workers helping them get apartments, get set up. We've seen Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter dinner coming on over for that. So we've really seen a sense of community amongst our workers and a big embrace. And it's been totally positive for our company.
Okay, just before we run into the newscast here, you and I have talked about Allied Construction in the past. Give the folks the Coles notes about what that company is and what kind of work you're doing.
So we're a general contractor. I just finished the apartment building at 1 Churchill Park. We're now redeveloping the former Costco building for ambulatory care and urgent care. We're also down at the Gathering Place, renovating that for the new residents there at the Gathering Place. So a lot of our new the new Canadians are working on all of these projects. And the biggest issue I see right now in the construction industry is a lack of skilled trades. And we talk about all of these apartment buildings that are required, and we're in the development stage on a number of them. But in order to complete all of these projects that the city need, and then when you get into the whole hydrogen and wind that is going, and the jobs that's going to create, we really need an investment in these types of programs. And it doesn't just need to be construction; it can be all kinds of different industries. But I really see a need for this particular program to really get I mean, we've got government funding, and that's great, but I really think we need to get more investment in these types of programs so these new Canadians are ready to go to work. They're proud, right? And they don't want to be living on assistance. And when they can get meaningful jobs that, quickly go from $20 an hour up to $25 an hour and the potential to continue growing, they want to stay here. And I heard that a lot from a lot of our students was, there's no jobs in Newfoundland. We got to go to Toronto. We've got to go to Montreal. And trying to get that through that, hey, no, you can make a great life for yourself here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And the jobs are here, and but we really need the government to help fund these types of projects. But we really need the local industry, all of these different contractors, subcontractors, to know that this program exists and that we can help give high-quality workers when they're really looking for them.
Really appreciate the time, John. Thanks for the call this morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's take a break for the newscast. Do not go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the NDP member elected in and serving the folks of the Torngat Mountains. That's Leela Evans. Leela, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Patty, I was just calling in to talk a little bit about the new petition that I put forward in the House of Assembly for my district, and just calling for better mental health supports. But Patty, before I had that petition in there, I was doing one on, improved access, adequate access for access to health care. And the reason why I would bring that up in the House of Assembly as much as I could was because my district is isolated. It's not connected by road, and most of the people in the province are starting to learn that now. But I don't think a lot of people in the province realize that if they were in Northern Labrador, a lot of times they would be going out for doctor's appointments and treatment, and they couldn't actually get out. They would be bumped off the flight. And it was quite alarming for me because it was happening to people going out for serious treatment, including chemo. And it was causing a lot of concerns. But then I realized I'm only talking about physical health. I haven't started talking about mental health because we've had a lot of serious issues recently in my district, right? So, and I know that's a problem across the province, but mental health in my district is really impacting not just our quality of life, but in actual fact, in a lot of cases, survival, where we're starting to lose a lot of people again to suicide.
What services are available in the Torngat Mountains?
Well, Patty, what's happening is, when I brought it up in question period to the Minister of Health, because we were we're even losing children. We're actually even losing elders to suicide, which is really concerning. But when I asked the minister, he talked about the 6 psychiatric beds in Labrador. He talked about FACTS teams, 811, Bridge the Gap. And my remote isolated communities, that's not effective. We also have cultural differences, language differences, and also, too, is if you're talking on the phone to somebody, there's a lot of, miscommunication. And when you need mental health supports, they have to be effective. And we've seen that they're not effective. And we just lost a 14-year-old child who actually was coming out from the coast, going into Goose Bay to speak with a counselor in person, and this was happening over and over again. And you hear from the mother about the child. After a 40-minute session, being told, okay, you're okay to go home, go back to your community. After a 40-minute session, this is happening over and over again. But what a lot of people don't realize, and the mother made it clear, and she wanted me, she said, I want people to know my child did not want to die. And in actual fact, when the child would go for the interview, she would wear a T-shirt, and you could see all the self-harm on her arms. And for me, Patty, as an MHA, I have to deal with a lot of situations. And I tell you, I understand now mental health concerns because it weighs heavy on me. And I have to be aware of my own mental health because when I went into the hospital room and saw that 14-year-old child on life support, knowing that the end was near and the family was going to have to take her off, the thing that really impacted me was she had a gown on and her arms were exposed, and I saw the cuts, recent cuts that were not healed, cuts that were healed to the point of being red, and then there was ones that were healed over time to be white. And Patty, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that, and I don't think I'll ever get over that as an MHA, and also as a person that knew them. I mean, I know all the people in my district, and in actual fact, I used to get rides sometimes back and forth to the community center with the mother and the kids in the vehicle. I knew the child. So to me, we got to start getting supports. And there was a PMR recently in the House of Assembly, the PCs put it forward, and it was talking about immediate action, not stuff down the road. I know there's an all-party committee for mental health and addictions. I sit on that, and we have a lot of issues with the way it's being rolled out. But what we saw in the House of Assembly is the Liberals changed the PMR, and it diluted the call for effective immediate action. And we end up having to vote against it. So, Patty, for me, mental health is a crisis. It's a crisis all across the province. It's a crisis across the country. But in my district, people know now through history that we were already in crisis, and we were looking for supports and services that we never got. And now what's happening is it's getting worse.
When I read that story, I mean, as a parent, or I guess just as a human being, to not be moved and to be saddened by it, you have to be made of cement. And it wasn't the first time that the child had tried to kill herself. And so to know that there's always going to be the problems between urban and rural and access to all types of care, whether it be with physical health and or mental health or dental care, what have you. But we do know that the gaps in service is extraordinary when we talk about the Torrington Mountains versus where I live in the city of St. John's. And it needn't be that way. It's not to suggest that we're all of a sudden going to be able to build a replica of the new mental health and addiction services over on the Health Sciences Complex, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be striving to do a lot better than we currently are. Would you like to say anything else this morning, Leila, before we run out of time?
Yes, Patty. We got the health accord now that everyone refers back to is going. They're using that as the blueprint now to change the overall healthcare system, and a big component of that is mental health care. But in actual fact, they talk a lot about the social determinants of health. And Patty, as MHA, I feel marginalized myself in the House of Assembly, speaking on behalf of my constituents, because I raised through petitions and questions really where we're lacking the social determinants of health. Access to food, access to healthy food, access to housing, access to a warm house. And when we look at all the things, now, Patty, I'm not going to take up your time because I've been on your show many times explaining to people in the province about the high costs in my district. But one of the things that I want people to hear from me, so the next time the Minister of Health talks about rolling out the health accord and talking about the social determinants of health, in the actual health accord, the social determinants of health fall into two categories, Patty. And one is social exclusion based on factors of identity, and the other one is on social safety net. And social exclusion, and I'll quote, refers to specific groups being denied the opportunity to participate in social life with limited access to social, culture, and economic resources. And it says Indigenous people are especially likely to experience social exclusion. And I'm not talking about friends or being excluded in the group. It says here that socially excluded persons, which Indigenous people fall into, are more likely to be unemployed, earn lower wages, and have less access to health and social services and means of further education. And that's what my petitions are about. It's about trying to get access to services and infrastructure so we can have the same quality of life as the rest of the province. If the province is suffering, Patty, we don't mind suffering along with them. If the province has high food costs, we don't mind paying for high food costs. But like since 2016, when the Liberals brought in their first budget, we've all suffered. And Patty, when you're looking at the seniors advocate, in her report, she says that 32% of all seniors couldn't afford the necessities of life. 33% of all seniors. Now, you hear the government talking about, we've increased the Newfoundland and Labrador seniors benefit. First, back in 2022, they increased it by 10%. And then in 23, they increased it by another 5%. So that was 15% increase. But what they failed to say is since they got into power, the last 6 years before 22, there was no increases at all. Now, I want to add, for every Newfoundlander and Labradorian out there, do you know what that 15% for seniors benefit, even if they were receiving the maximum benefit for this 15%, that would just be an extra $200 a year.
Yeah, and it's only captures some 50,000 people in the province, period.
No, and for seniors in my district, Patty, that wouldn't even be able to afford them the cost of stove oil to heat their house for 2 weeks.
Right. Leila, I appreciate the time. I do have to get going, but thanks for making time for the show.
Okay, thank you very much, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. That's Leila Evans, NDP member, Torringay Mountains. Final break. When we come back, Dr. Gina Bogdan is in the queue. She's the VP for Medical Services at NL Health Services. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. As advertised, let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the VP of Medical Services with NL Health Services, Dr. Gina Bogdan. Dr. Bogdan, you're on the air.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning.
Happy to have you on the show. So, obviously, good news when we're successful in recruiting healthcare professionals, and in this case, doctors. With the addition of 25, what was the net gain through the first quarter of this year?
So this is very great news, and we're happy to be able to report that from January 1st to April 1st of this year, we have now secured an additional 25 physicians in the system across the province. Most of these physicians are hired within the central and eastern rural zones in a variety of specialty programs, but primarily within the realm of family medicine. So this is a very exciting detail to report. Any opportunity that we have to add healthcare providers to our system is certainly a win-win for everybody to increase access to much-needed resources.
So how many doctors left the system in the first 3 months while we added these 25?
So that's a really difficult question to answer because, like any employee or employer, physicians leave the health environment for various systems. We would expect that some physicians would retire or choose to pivot and take on another realm of medicine, per se, or move into the administrative world. But I don't have an exact number to share with you right now.
Okay, can you help us understand the breakdown of 25, whether it be the numbers for Mun's Faculty of Medicine, other parts of the country, or internationally?
So I don't have a particular breakdown, but what I can say is that some of these 25 certainly have came from people who have went through Mun's Faculty of Medicine, some people who have moved from other parts of Canada, and some, of course, who have moved from international countries and are relocating to our province.
When we look at the various disciplines they'll be practicing, whether it be family medicine, pathology, orthopedics, gynecology, obstetrics, psychiatry, were these specifically targeted for these disciplines, or it just so happens that, when we throw it out to recruit all, that's what we came up with?
No, so if you look, we are advertising for various specialties across the province, family medicine, and all of the ones that you've included. So each physician that we, within that 25, has fulfilled a need that we've had identified within the province across one of our zones.
What's also interesting in this story is the 5-year commitment to work in the province. So, number one, does that mean a commitment to work in a very specific, as put forward by NL Health Services, part of the province?
So the whole province right now is identified as an area of need, and we can see that because we are advertising for various specialties in right across the province, so from the East Coast right into Labrador. The return to service commitment is specific for an area of need across the province. So, for example, we aim to give the physician the best work-life balance that they can hope for. So should a physician, for example, decide that they wanted to work in Labrador for the first 2 years, and should something in life circumstances then draw that physician to move into central Newfoundland, if we've had an identified need in central Newfoundland, then we would work with that physician to relocate to central Newfoundland to meet the physician's desire. And we consider that a win-win for the province. We've not lost the physician. We are still retaining that physician in our healthcare system. And in this environment, when we do have multiple identified needs, we are looking to keep every physician that we possibly can.
We've talked about return for service agreements in the past, specifically about Munns Med School. And I've been told repeatedly that it doesn't work or can't work or won't work, but it's part of this particular protocol and process this time. Is it something that we can be looking at for every graduate of Munns Med School? Because in essence, the taxpayer is directly subsidizing their education. So can we expect this to be part of the recruitment process out of our own medical school?
This is an important part of our recruitment process, using the recruitment incentives that the government of Newfoundland and Labrador has put forward, some of which include the Come Home incentive and the physician signing bonus. Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services has added a lot of additional resources in the last year to 18 months with regards to not only physician recruitment but healthcare provider recruitment in general. And one important pillar of that is our connection with the med school here at Memorial. So right from the day that they enter medical school until the day that they leave and enter residency, we are very present. We have stepped up our connectivity or our connection points with the students over the 4 years so that they are well informed with regards to employment opportunities that would exist in the province. And they are also very well informed to the recruitment incentives, which are very financially attractive, in hopes that they will continue to stay in practice with us after they finish their postgraduate training.
Are all 25 ready to hit the ground running, or any of the international recruited doctors still dealing with the college?
I don't have a definite number on that, but it is my understanding that they've all achieved their licensure with the college.
I appreciate the time. Anything else you'd like to add this morning, Dr. Bugden?
No, that's it. Thank you. I just wanted to take a second. So May 19th is World Family Doctor Day, and I just wanted to take a second to give a big thank you to all our family medicine providers within the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So on behalf of myself and Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services, we thank you for being such valued team members, and you are the foundation of our healthcare system, and we look forward to many years of continued partnership. So yeah, if you have a family doctor, please say thank you. It's an important day that we should recognize.
I appreciate your time. Have a nice weekend, Dr. Bugden.
You too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, final word of this morning goes to line number 4. So good morning to Dr. Todd Young from Medicuro and Main Street Medical in Springdale. Dr. Young, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you. I wish we had more time, but tell us about the announcement that took place in your region this morning.
Yeah, the announcement actually is going to take place at around 2 p.m. There's just been some delays.
I apologize.
Premier Fury and Minister Osborne will be in our district and making an announcement about a few things, actually. But a couple of things that have been, we've always been willing and able and available, Patty, as you know, with Medicuro to, look at opportunities where we can improve healthcare for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so one of the opportunities that has come up is that in the community of Lassie, there is a clinic there that's been dormant for some time, just has not had any services. And so the Department of Health has asked for our assistance in trying to bring back some services for the people of Lassie and the Bayburt Peninsula through a virtual platform, including Medicuro. So this is a very exciting time. And I think, some of the other things that are being announced today also have to do with the Triton Clinic, that it's going to be reopened again. And that's been, since the pandemic, we have not been able to provide services to that community just due to a lack of physician resources. And as Dr. Bugden was just mentioning, the numbers do seem to be improving. And it's so hopeful and optimistic to finally see that some things are moving in the right direction. And it's good, whether it's in-person care or virtual care, those things are positive changes and increasing access for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
I know Dave gave you the heads up that we'd probably run out of time very quickly, so I think you're going to be able to join us again next week so we can have a bit more of a well-rounded conversation. How does that sound?
Look forward to it, and we need to talk about addictions again next week.
Yeah, let's do that. Thanks, Dr. Young.
Take care. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, that was the final word. Good show today. Big thanks for everyone who supports the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning. No, we're off on Monday. On Tuesday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy, long weekend. Talk Tuesday. Bye-bye.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.